This is Greg Huck. I'm out in the bush, camped out a little bit, and I thought I'd bring you another treasure story. This one started about a year and a half, 2 years ago when a TV producer contacted me, wanted to know what I knew about the Skelton Canyon treasure, which is located over in eastern Arizona, almost on the New Mexico border. Anyway, I told her, well, let me get back with her, and we rescheduled a conference call, and I went ahead and got a hold of my friend Jim, who's really into the history of Arizona, has a lot of books on it, and we started researching it. So our first book he came across was back in 1930, and I'll show you that right now and what the story entails. As we started researching this, Jim found an old publication, it was called The History of Arizona. It was 1930. And he looked inside that on page 108. It tells about the robbery in Skelton Canyon, and it mentions Billy Grounds and Zwing Hunt in the first sentence there. So there's something to that. Why did they mention him in the first sentence? Our next publication we looked at was the February 1963 issue of True West magazine. And inside it, it really had an expanded story here on the buried treasure of the Chiricahuas, which was the same story but had a lot more content to it. So it's well worth looking at. After doing our research, the story kind of morphed into really a full-blown treasure story, let's say. It seems like Mexicans would oftentimes run cattle up through Skelton Canyon up into the Arizona, and smugglers would also use it from the robberies down in Mexico and bring stuff up. One case was that they said that they dropped the Church of Monterey and the bank, and that was part of the treasure. Well, that turned out not to be true. We researched that, and there was no recorded robberies down there in Monterey, which is over 1,000 miles away anyway. So the story went on, and it seems like there was a outlaw town called Galeyville, which is about an hour or so east of Tombstone up in the mountains, and it was run by an outlaw called Curly Bill Brocious, and his lieutenant was Johnny Ringo. And oftentimes you'd find the clans, McLaury's over there hanging out with me, because this town was totally lawless. It was nothing but thieves, cattle rustlers, you name it, and that was the town. And the gun ruled the law. That was it. Well, anyway, at one time there was some smugglers, Mexican smugglers, coming up Skelton Canyon, and they shot them up at a place called Devil's Kitchen. It was one story anyway, and they divided up the spoils, which is about, they said, $75,000 amongst all the gang members. Within a short period of time, they've already drank it up, gambling away and whatever else, and they went back to doing whatever they usually did, rustling cattle or whatever. Well, there was some a little bit of intel come up from Mexico. There was going to be another shipment coming up, and the Mexicans have been laying off coming through Skelton Canyon because of that one raid. So they sent a guy named Hughes down there to kind of get some intel on it in this little Mexican town. And Hughes looked Mexican, he spoke fluent Spanish, he blended right in. We went down there and he drank with them, talked with them, and saw some of this treasure. He started, he started talking to them, and they said, well, they're going to take this up into Arizona, and they're going a certain way. He said, well, go up Skelton Canyon. He said, oh, no, that we've been attacked here before. And he says, that's fine. He says, all the outlaws are gone now. It's the safest route, and it's shorter. There shouldn't be a problem at all. He said, I've been through there. It's not a problem. So he convinced them that they go up Skelton Canyon. So he started heading that way, and Hughes rode like heck to get back to Galeyville to tell Curly Bill Brocious and them about, get ready for this shipment. Well, Curly Bill and Johnny Ringo were gone somewhere, so Hughes didn't want to miss the opportunity. So he gathered up a bunch of guys in town there and went out and set up an ambush. Well, Two of them, the guys that are prominent in this story, is a guy named Zwing Hunt and Billy Grounds. They were two young guys out of Texas. Well, anyway, they went out there and they let them get through Devil's Kitchen and almost to the mouth of the canyon and let them sit down there, take a little lunch siesta, and then they opened up on them. They shot most of them, if not all of them. Then they started shooting the mules so they didn't get away. There's supposedly 16 mules. One report was they had a cigar box full of diamonds worth over 100,000. They had 39 bars of gold. They had so many thousand gold peso coins. So if it's true, I don't know. But anyway, that's part of one of the stories. Anyway, there's so much they had to, they shot the mules so they couldn't get away. They took the treasure and buried it. And the coins and stuff, the guys just kind of filled their pockets, and away they went back to Galeyville. And they was going to come back and get the treasure later. Well, Hughes made a deal with Grounds and Zwing Hunt to come back later that evening, find a wagon and a driver, come and take that treasure, dig it up, and go hide it somewhere else, and then come back to Galeyville and meet up with Hughes. Well, they did. They went out and they found a Mexican fellow with a team and a wagon. They went out to Skelton Canyon, took the treasure up, and rode all night somewhere and reburied that treasure. All right, well, when they got it reburied and the hole covered up, they shot the Mexican, the horses, and burned the wagon so there wouldn't be any trace of anything. And they hid out in a cave for 4 months. They double-crossed Hughes. They didn't go back to town, so they was going to keep the treasure to themselves. All right, well, during those 4 months, Billy Grounds would start writing a letter, and he would stop the stage going by every week or whatever and hand a letter to his sister. Well, supposedly he sent 19 letters over this time frame back to his sister. He's kind of telling where they were at. At a place called Davis Mountain and in a cave and on and on. And so anyway, after about 4 months, I think they got bored. They went to a town called Charleston to a silver mining office, and they were going to rob it. Well, they went in there, and I think one of them's rifle actually went off and killed one guy straight away, and it kind of frightened them. They just hurried up and took off, didn't take anything. Well, they got a hold of the sheriff, and the sheriff tracked them down the next day to a house. Well, the posse, there was 5 of them in it, surrounded the house, and the gunfight ensued. They killed one of the deputies, and they killed Billy Grounds. And Zwing Hunt got wounded. He had a bullet kind of went through him, went through part of his lung and out his back. So they took him to Tombstone, put him in a hospital for convalescence, handcuffed him to the bed. One story said his uncle come to visit him. Another said his brother come to visit him. But anyway, Zwing Hunt told him about the treasure, drew up a little map and give it to him. Anyway, a couple of nights later, he disappeared. He got out of that bed some way or another, and he was gone. Later on, it was said he was killed by Indians somewhere. All right, but if you research him, you can find an actual grave site in Arizona. We found this little map on the internet that shows Zwing Hunt's grave site. So he was a real deal, but there's not many roads to get back in there nowadays. His brother and uncle looked for this treasure for like 20 or 30 years looking for it. And then another fella, knew him. He started looking for it. He owned a ranch down there. And he searched for years looking for it. But he figured that there was no Davis Mountain, so it had to be Harris Mountain. So he concentrated his search around there. Well, part of the story was that, the treasure was buried down from where their cave was, but there were 2 springs in this canyon and a waterfall, probably when it rained, and this particular canyon was full of poplar trees, supposedly. And there's not very many canyons with those descriptions. Later on, a fellow out of Tucson called F.C. Hamill, Fern Hamill, he was a treasure hunter, did a lot of different things, but he really got focused on this treasure. And he started, really research it, found out his lawyer, great-great-grandmother was a sister to Billy Grounds. And this old lawyer had 5 of the letters that Grounds had sent to his sister. So Hamill put an ad in the paper, see if he could find any other letters. That's what was said. And another family member had another 4 letters. So Hamill ended up with 9 of the 19 letters. And supposedly ended up with the map. So he went looking, and he supposedly thought he found the cave, he found different things in it that reflected what, was written in the letters, and he thinks he found the treasure. Well, anyway, or where it's located, close to it. He put an ad in the paper. I mean, stories were in the paper about it, but he put the ad in the paper asking for money, partner to go after this treasure. He would share it, but he's needing financial backing. This is a 1988 newspaper clipping. Tells about the treasure story and about F.C. Hamill looking for it. So it was mentioned several times in the newspaper over the years. And this is another story, and him also looking for investment money to go after the treasure where he thought it was. Right? And then I came across a map supposedly to this treasure story from where Zwing Hunt and Billy Grounds head out. And it says east of Tusk, which is probably grass down in front of the cave entrance. So you just have to take that for what it's worth. Hamill ended up being on Unsolved Mysteries, which was narrated by Robert Stack. It was season 3, episode 12. And you can go on internet and you can look it up and you can watch that episode. This is a picture of Vern Hamill on Unsolved Mysteries of Robert Stack. This was season 3, episode 12, and you can find this on the internet, and if you're interested, it's well worth watching for the information. And he tells his story. Another fellow tells he thinks it's real. Then he had a historian who said he didn't think it was real at all. So it gives a lot of different viewpoints, and it's pretty informative. So anyway, Jim and I decided that, we might go out there and have a look at Skelton Canyon, because that was where Geronimo signed a peace treaty. And if you go out on Highway 80, just past Apache, a little town there, there's a monument out there on the road, which is, maybe 10 miles away from where the actual treaty was signed. But they built this monument in 1934. I'll show you a picture, because you have to cross a private ranch to get back to where the actual signing of the treaty was at Skelton Canyon. Our first stop is a Geronimo Surrender Monument right outside Apache. Like I said, it was built in 1934. It looks like they've really kept it up over the years. It's in pretty good shape. Now we're going to try to head on down to Skelton Canyon. Let's take a quick look at the topo map. Here's a Geronimo Surrender Monument on Highway 80 just outside Apache. This is the road that goes all the way down to the mouth of Skelton Canyon. Just inside this pink line, this is National Forest. This is all private ranch land. And you can see Devil's Kitchen here. And it looks like the four-wheel drive goes a ways and stops on down here. Okay? Well, our problem was up here at the gate at the Apache Elementary School to get in on this road. The gate was shut and locked. So we tried to contact anybody at the school. There's no one there. So we went to Apache. There was a couple houses there, and we happened to run into a couple that owned them. And they said that gate's been locked for probably 4+ years. And a lot of illegal immigration coming up through there. The cartels own the mountains at nighttime. It's not safe. And that rancher hasn't let anybody in there for quite some time. So anyway, he said the only way to get into the canyon, Skelton Canyon, you go on Geronimo Trail, runs out of Douglas all the way up into New Mexico. And I think this might be it. And you could go back, and it's probably a hike up there, but that's a heck of a hike. He says you can't get a four-wheel drive up there. But the treasure story said they moved the treasure from here overnight, some people say 20 to 30 miles, to a canyon, and it had a cave, and it had poplar trees in that canyon. And it couldn't have been too far off the stagecoach route. So I went to have to research where the stagecoach route was coming down to Tombstone. Look at again, the Unsolved Mysteries with Fern Hamill, and you might come up with an idea where this treasure might be buried, if there ever was one, but that's just a treasure story. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. I've got a few more clips following right now that shows our trip down from Tucson. We went through Tombstone, Bisbee, and Douglas, and took in some of the sights and history there. So if you want to continue watching, I'll show you that too. But thanks again for watching, and we have some more coming up fairly soon. Thank you. It was fairly early in the morning when we got to Tombstone, and the first stop coming into town is the Boot Hill Graveyard. It's kind of a little tourist trap. They said it's not the original graveyard, they moved it, but you can walk around. It's got some history monuments and stuff there. Probably a lot of the graves out there have things initialed on them and telling a little bit about it. All right, this plaque we're going to look at here is over by the main building. Tells a little bit of history about Boot Hill. Our next stop was downtown. We went to the OK Corral. That's where supposedly the famous gunfight was, and they have reenactments out there all the time for the tourists. We walk down the street there. Here comes a stagecoach. You can ride on a stagecoach. It takes you around town, tells you a little bit about the history. So it's kind of a unique little experience. Down at the end of the road there was a Birdcage Theater, which is an original building. I think it was built in 1881 or so. As we started to leave, we walked past Big Nose Cage Saloon. It looks like they had a pretty wild night the night before, just looking at all the beer kegs sitting outside. I'm sure a few people stopped in for a cold one. Our next stop was in Bisbee, Arizona, at the Copper Queen Hotel, built in 1902, managed by Phelps Dodge. It was built for mining investors and executives, kind of a luxurious place to stay while they visited the mines. And it's still in operation today. You can go inside, and you see they have their lobby, and in the background there they have the Copper Queen safe for the hotel. And there's other hotels around town built about the same time frame, about 100 years ago. There's a lot of interesting architecture around this town, just to have a look as you walk around. Our next little stop was at the Mining Museum. It's right downtown. And out front, they've got a nice display of old mining cars. I mean, every type imaginable, some I've never ever seen. So it's just kind of a good little look around, walk around town. Okay, our next stop was going to go out to what made this town famous, the Copper Queen Mine. They do underground mine tours here, which are really worth doing. I think it takes about an hour. They take you underground. All right, and if you go inside, they have a nice display of minerals. They've got a model of the mine and everything, and a lot of history. And that's where you buy the tickets and do the underground mine tour. All right, this is right outside of town. It's called the Lavender Pit, named after a guy named Lavender. This is low-grade ore. They didn't process it in Bisbee. They took it on down to Douglas. That's where Phelps Dodge headquarters were. And being a low-grade sulfide ore, they processed it down there. They smelted it down there. And there's still slag piles down there today. Our next stop is down in Douglas, Arizona, at the Gadsden Hotel. Since Douglas was the main office for Phelps Dodge, they built this hotel In 1907, it opened in November, and it was for dignitaries and high-end investors that came down here. And it's quite luxurious inside. As you step inside the lobby here, there's a lot of old newspaper clippings and ads and everything about the hotel. And if you notice, Phelps Dodge is mentioned on most of these articles. It was quite a big operation. All right. So on the other side of the room here, before we get into the hotel lobby, is another old clipping. It looked like it's had better days. But as you scroll down, you can see it was featured as the most popular hotel of the Southwest because of the luxury accommodations. All right, here's the front desk. You can book a room. You look around, the beautiful columns, the stained glass, the architecture, the work, and everything. I mean, it's superb. It's really been kept up well, and it might be a stay for a night if you come down this way just to enjoy it. All right. Thanks for joining us. If you get a chance, go to our website at desertroamerpress.com. Check out our treasure blog and videos, and some of the books we have for sale there, and subscribe if you would. If not, you can go to our YouTube channel and subscribe there. We have over 22 videos now posted. Thank you.